Deep underground where the sun never reaches there is a den beneath the city of Babylon. It is carved from stone. The walls are smooth from centuries of use, polished by the bodies of condemned men who pressed against them in their final moments. The floor is stained dark with blood that no amount of scrubbing can remove. The air smells of death and animal musk and fear. And in this den, on one particular night, an old man stood surrounded by lions. The beasts circled him in the darkness. Their eyes caught what little light filtered down from above, glowing like coals. Their breath came in low rumbles that resonated in the stone chamber. Their claws clicked on the floor as they paced, considering this new prey that had been thrown to them. The old man stood perfectly still. Not frozen in terror, though terror would have been reasonable. Still in a different way. The way a man stands when he has made his decision and there is nothing left to do but wait. His name was Daniel. He was 82 years old. He had survived the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple, the death of everyone he had ever known as a child. He had survived being taken captive to a foreign land. He had survived 3 kings and their courts, full of intrigue and assassination and political games that would have destroyed lesser men. He had survived by wisdom, by integrity, by a kind of stubborn faith that refused to compromise even when compromise would have saved his life. And now, after all those years, after all that survival, he stood in a den of lions. Because he prayed. That is what got him killed. Or what was supposed to get him killed. He prayed to his God when the king had made it illegal to pray to anyone but the king himself. And so they threw him to the lions. This is not a story about a miracle, though a miracle happens. This is a story about what it costs to be faithful in a faithless world. This is a story about integrity in a system built on corruption. This is a story about an old man who decided, a very long time ago, that some things matter more than survival. And this story will challenge you because it asks a question we would rather not answer. What would you die for? Not what would you say you believe in. Not what you would defend in an argument. What would you actually literally die for? What principle matters so much to you that you would let them throw you to the lions rather than compromise it? Daniel knew his answer. And his answer got him thrown into a pit with predators designed by nature to kill. But to understand why Daniel ended up in that den, why he was willing to go there, why the miracle that saved him matters at all, we need to go back. We need to go back 70 years. Back to when Daniel was not an old man standing calmly in a den of lions, but a boy watching his city burn. Welcome back to our channel. Your participation has made our journey here very interesting. Before we continue with the story, please support our channel by subscribing, clicking the like button, and turning on notifications. Please leave a comment and suggest other video topics you would like us to work on. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to the story. Jerusalem is burning. The year is 605 BC. The Babylonian army surrounds the city. Their siege engines batter the walls. Their soldiers pour through breaches in the defenses like water through a broken dam. Inside the city, people are screaming. Some are running, trying to find places to hide that do not exist. Some are fighting, throwing themselves at trained soldiers with whatever weapons they can find, dying uselessly. Some are simply standing, frozen, unable to process what is happening to their world. The temple, the center of everything, the place where God himself was supposed to dwell, is on fire. Smoke rises from it in great black columns that darken the sky. And somewhere in this chaos there is a boy. His name is Daniel. He is perhaps 12 years old, maybe 13. The text does not tell us exactly. He is from a noble family, possibly even royal blood. His parents are educated, wealthy, connected to the court. They have raised him in the ways of his people, taught him the law of Moses, trained him to read and write in a time when most people are illiterate. He has been told all his life that his people are special, chosen, protected by God. That Jerusalem is the holy city, impregnable because God dwells in the temple. That the Davidic line will rule forever because God promised it. And now he is watching all of that burn. Can you imagine what that does to a child? Everything you have been told about how the world works, about who you are, about what God does, is being contradicted by the evidence of your eyes. The holy city is being destroyed. The temple is burning. The Davidic king is about to be taken captive. And God is not stopping any of it. The Babylonian soldiers move through the city methodically. They are not mindless destroyers. They are professional conquerors. They know what they are doing. They kill those who resist. They take captive those who might be useful. And Daniel, young, educated, from a good family, is exactly the kind of person they are looking for. He is rounded up with other young nobles. They are bound. They are marched out of the burning city. Behind them, Jerusalem collapses. The last thing Daniel sees of his home is smoke and flame. The Babylonians take everything of value from the temple before they destroy it. Gold vessels, silver instruments, the sacred objects that were supposed to be used only in the worship of the God of Israel. They load it all onto carts. And they take it to Babylon, to be placed in the temple of their god, Marduk. As if to say, your God has lost. Our God has won. The captives are marched east. Hundreds of miles. Weeks of walking. Young Daniel walks in chains, watching the landscape change from the hills of Judah to the flat plains of Mesopotamia. Everything he knows is behind him. Everything he does not know is ahead. And here is what we need to understand about this moment, because it sets up everything that follows. Daniel has a choice to make. Not a conscious choice perhaps. Not a decision he sits down and thinks through. But a choice nonetheless. He can decide that everything he was taught was a lie. That God does not exist or does not care, or is not strong enough to protect his people. That faith is foolishness. That survival is the only thing that matters, and survival means adapting, conforming, becoming whatever the Babylonians want him to become. He can decide that God is still God, even when everything looks like God has abandoned his people. That the promises still matter even when they seem broken. That integrity still matters even when no one is watching. That some things are worth holding on to, even when letting go would be easier. Daniel, at 12 or 13 years old, makes the second choice. And that choice, made in the ashes of Jerusalem, will define the rest of his life. We do not know if he made it consciously. We do not know if he struggled with doubt. We do not know if he wept or raged or questioned. The text does not tell us. It just shows us what happens next. Babylon is unlike anything Daniel has ever seen. If Jerusalem was a city, Babylon is a wonder of the world. The walls are so thick that chariots can race on top of them. The Ishtar Gate is covered in blue glazed tiles depicting dragons and bulls. The Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders, rise in terraced levels, green and lush in the middle of the desert. The city is a statement of power. A declaration that Babylon is the center of the world and all other nations are merely tributaries. And the Babylonians have a strategy for dealing with conquered peoples. They do not just conquer you militarily. They conquer you culturally. They take the best and brightest young people from the nations they defeat and they re-educate them. They strip away your identity and give you a new one. They make you Babylonian. And if they do it well, you will not even realize it is happening. You will think you are just being given opportunity, education, advancement. You will forget, eventually, that you were ever anything else. This is the program Daniel enters. The text describes it in detail. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, orders Ashpenaz, the chief of his eunuchs, to bring in some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility. He wants youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace. These young men are to be taught the literature and language of the Chaldeans. They are to be given a daily portion of the food that the king eats, and of the wine that he drinks. They are to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they are to stand before the king. It sounds generous, does it not? Free education, royal food, a position in the court. But look at what is actually happening. First, they change the young men's names. Daniel, which means God is my judge, becomes Belteshazzar, which means Bel protect his life. Bel is another name for Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. Hananiah, Yahweh is gracious, becomes Shadrach. Mishael, who is like God, becomes Meshach. Azariah, Yahweh has helped, becomes Abednego. Every name that references the God of Israel is replaced with a name that references the gods of Babylon. Your name is your identity. It is who you are. It connects you to your family, your heritage, your God. And the Babylonians are erasing that. Second, they immerse the young men in Babylonian culture. The literature of the Chaldeans includes their religious texts, their myths about how the gods created the world, their practices of divination and astrology and magic. Daniel is being taught things that directly contradict what he learned in Jerusalem. He is being taught that there are many gods, not one. He is being taught that the future can be read in the stars, not determined by the sovereign will of Yahweh. He is being taught a completely different worldview. And he is being taught by the best teachers in the empire, men who are brilliant, persuasive, who can make Babylonian wisdom seem compelling and sophisticated and obviously true. Third, they feed the young men from the king's table. This might seem like just a nice perk, but the food from the king's table has likely been offered to idols first. Eating it is participating, even passively, in the worship of other gods. And some of the food would have been forbidden under Jewish dietary law. So every meal is a small compromise. A small step away from the identity you used to have. A small step toward becoming Babylonian. And the brilliance of this strategy is that it is gradual. No one is forcing Daniel to bow to an idol. No one is telling him he cannot believe in his God. They are just offering him opportunity, advancement, success. All he has to do is go along. Adapt. Be flexible. Recognize that he is in a different culture now and he needs to fit in. Do you see how insidious this is? This is not persecution. This is assimilation. And assimilation is often more dangerous than persecution because it looks like blessing. Most of the young men in the program probably went along with it. Why would you not? You have lost everything. Your city is destroyed. Your family is likely dead or scattered. You are a captive in a foreign land with no power, no resources, no future except what the Babylonians give you. And they are offering you a good future. Education. Position. Wealth. All you have to do is let go of a few old ideas. Update your thinking. Recognize that the world is more complex than you thought. Become a citizen of the empire. Most of the young men probably did exactly that. But Daniel does not. Daniel makes a decision. He resolves in his heart that he will not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drinks. Notice that language. He resolves in his heart. This is not a spur-of-the-moment decision. This is not emotion. This is not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. This is a decision made in the deep part of himself, the part that defines who he is. He will not defile himself. He will not compromise on this. But here is what is remarkable. Daniel does not just refuse. He does not throw a fit. He does not make a scene. He goes to the chief of the eunuchs and asks permission. He is respectful. He is strategic. He understands the system he is in and works within it as much as he can. He says to Ashpenaz, the chief of the eunuchs, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see." This is brilliant. Daniel is not demanding his rights. He is proposing an experiment. He is making it easy for the official to say yes. And he is putting his faith to the test. He believes that God will honor his faithfulness, that 10 days of vegetables and water will not make him weaker but stronger. But Ashpenaz is worried. He says to Daniel, "I fear my lord the king who assigned your food and your drink. For why should he see that you were in worse condition than the youths who are your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king." This is a real concern. If Daniel looks sickly, if he performs poorly, Ashpenaz could lose his job. Or his head. So Daniel goes to the steward whom Ashpenaz has appointed over him and his friends. He makes the same proposal. 10 days. Vegetables and water. Then judge. And the steward agrees. For 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends eat vegetables and drink water while the other young men eat the king's food and drink the king's wine. And at the end of 10 days, they look healthier and better nourished than all the youths who ate the king's food. This is the first miracle in Daniel's story. Not a dramatic miracle. Not a parting of the sea or fire from heaven. Just 4 young men who look better than they should. But it is significant. Because it establishes a pattern that will run through Daniel's entire life. When Daniel is faithful to God, even in small things, even when it cost him something, God honors that faithfulness. Not always in dramatic ways. Not always immediately. But consistently. God shows up for those who refuse to compromise. The steward takes away their portion of the food and the wine and gives them vegetables. And Daniel and his friends continue in the program, learning the literature and language of the Chaldeans, but maintaining their identity as followers of the God of Israel. They are in Babylon, but they are not of Babylon. 3 years pass. At the end of the 3 years, all the young men are brought before King Nebuchadnezzar. And the king speaks with them. And among all of them, none were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. 10 times better. Not slightly better. Not marginally superior. 10 times better. The young men who refused to compromise, who ate vegetables instead of royal food, who maintained their identity instead of assimilating completely, are the best in the entire empire. And Nebuchadnezzar, who does not care about their God, who does not share their values, who is the most powerful man in the world, recognizes their superiority. He puts them in his service. Daniel enters the court of the king of Babylon. And this is where the real story begins. Because now Daniel has influence. Now he has access to power. Now he is in a position where his faith will be tested not by poverty and persecution but by success and opportunity. And that, as it turns out, is an even harder test. In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar has dreams. These are not normal dreams. These are dreams that terrify him. Dreams that wake him in the middle of the night, heart pounding, sweat soaking through his sheets. Dreams that feel significant in a way he cannot articulate. He knows, somehow, that these dreams mean something. That they are a message. But he does not know what they mean. So he does what ancient kings do when they need answers. He calls in the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans. These are the professional wise men of Babylon. They have studied the stars, the omens, the sacred texts. They claim to be able to interpret dreams, to read the future, to access the knowledge of the gods. They come before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar says to them, I had a dream and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. The Chaldeans say to the king, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream and we will show the interpretation. This is the normal process. The king tells the dream, the wise men interpret it. But Nebuchadnezzar does something unexpected. He says, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and its interpretation. Wait. The king is not just asking for an interpretation. He is asking them to tell him what he dreamed. The wise men are understandably confused. They answer again, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation. But the king is insistent. And now he is getting angry. He says, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation. This is a test. Nebuchadnezzar is testing whether these wise men actually have access to divine knowledge or whether they are just skilled at making plausible-sounding interpretations of whatever the king tells them. And the wise men know they are trapped. They say, there is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. They are admitting defeat. What the king is asking is impossible. And the king, because he is an absolute monarch who does not accept the word impossible, becomes furious. He orders that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. Not just the ones who failed to interpret the dream. All of them. And the decree goes out. The wise men are to be killed. And Daniel and his friends, because they are counted among the wise men of Babylon, are to be killed as well. Daniel does not even know about the dream yet. He was not called in with the first group. But because he is part of the system, because he has been successful in it, he is now condemned to die because of someone else's failure. Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, comes to execute Daniel. And Daniel, with what the text calls prudence and discretion, asks why the decree is so urgent. Arioch explains the situation. And Daniel goes into the king and asks for time, that he might show the king the interpretation. This is audacious. All the other wise men have failed. They have all been condemned to death. And this young Hebrew, this recent graduate of the training program, asks for a chance to do what they could not. But Nebuchadnezzar grants him time. Maybe because he has nothing to lose. Maybe because something about Daniel impresses him. We do not know. Daniel goes to his house. He tells Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah what has happened. And they pray. They do not consult books of wisdom. They do not try to guess at what the dream might have been. They pray to the God of heaven to reveal the mystery. And that night, the mystery is revealed to Daniel in a vision. God shows him the dream and its interpretation. And Daniel does something remarkable before he goes back to the king. He prays again. But this time it is not a prayer of request. It is a prayer of thanksgiving and worship. He says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might." He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. Read that prayer again. Daniel is about to save his own life and the lives of all the wise men in Babylon. But before he does, he stops to worship. He gives credit where credit is due. This is not his wisdom. This is not his ability. This is God revealing what only God can reveal. And Daniel makes sure everyone knows it. He goes to Arioch and says, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation." Arioch brings him in quickly. He says to the king, "I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation." And Nebuchadnezzar says to Daniel, "Are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation?" This is the moment. Daniel could claim credit. He could make himself look impressive. But he does not. He says, "No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. There is a God in heaven. Not the gods of Babylon. Not human wisdom. Not magic or astrology. There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." And then Daniel tells the king his dream. Daniel describes the dream with perfect accuracy. He says, "You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay." Nebuchadnezzar must be stunned. This is exactly what he saw. Daniel continues, "As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold, all together were broken in pieces, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth." And then Daniel gives the interpretation. The head of gold is Nebuchadnezzar himself. Babylon, the greatest empire the world has yet seen. But after him, another kingdom will arise inferior to his. The chest and arms of silver. Then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. Then a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, which breaks and shatters all things. And the feet, partly iron and partly clay, represent a divided kingdom. But in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. It will break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end. And it will stand forever. This is not just dream interpretation. This is prophecy. Daniel is describing the entire future of human empire. From Babylon to Persia to Greece to Rome to the divided kingdoms that will follow. And ultimately to the kingdom of God that will supersede them all. Nebuchadnezzar hears this and falls on his face. The most powerful man in the world bows before a Hebrew captive. He says to Daniel, "Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." And he promotes Daniel. He makes him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel asks the king to appoint Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. And Daniel remains at the king's court. In one night, Daniel goes from condemned prisoner to the second most powerful man in the empire. Because he refused to compromise. Because he prayed. Because he gave credit to God instead of taking it for himself. This is the first major test of Daniel's faith, and he passes it spectacularly. But the tests are not over. They are only beginning. Because Daniel is now in a position of significant power and influence. And power has a way of corrupting even the most faithful. The question is, will Daniel maintain his integrity when he has something to lose? Will he stay faithful when faithfulness cost him not his life but his position? We are about to find out. Some time passes. We do not know how much. The text does not say. But Nebuchadnezzar makes a golden image. It is enormous. 60 cubits high, about 90 feet. 6 cubits broad, about 9 feet. He sets it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And he sends out a decree that all the officials of the provinces are to come to the dedication of this image. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gather for the dedication. It is a display of power and unity. The entire administration of the empire in one place, all focused on this massive golden statue. And then the herald proclaims, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace." This is not optional. This is a command backed by the threat of execution in one of the most horrifying ways imaginable. Burning alive in a furnace. The music plays. And everyone falls down. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates. Thousands of officials, all prostrate on the ground before the golden image. All except 3. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remain standing. Daniel is not mentioned in this story. He may have been away on official business. He may have had some exemption because of his high position. We do not know. But his 3 friends are there. And they do not bow. Certain Chaldeans come forward and maliciously accuse the Jews. They say to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Notice the accusation. These men pay no attention to you. It is personal. It is about disrespect to the king himself. And it works. Nebuchadnezzar is furious. He orders Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be brought before him. And he gives them a second chance. He says, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now if you are ready when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Who is the God who will deliver you?" It is a challenge. A taunt. Nebuchadnezzar is saying, "I am more powerful than your God. I control life and death. I control the furnace. What can your God do against me?" And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answer. Their answer is one of the most remarkable statements of faith in the entire Bible. They say, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Read that again slowly. Our God is able to deliver us. He will deliver us. But if not, we still will not bow. This is faith without guarantees. This is faith that says, we believe God can save us. We believe God will save us. But even if he does not, even if we burn, we will not compromise. This is not faith in a particular outcome. This is faith in God himself, regardless of the outcome. And it enrages Nebuchadnezzar. His face changes. The text says he is filled with fury. He orders the furnace heated 7 times more than it is usually heated. He commands some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. They are bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments. And they are thrown into the furnace. The furnace is so hot that the flames kill the soldiers who throw them in. The 3 men fall bound into the burning fiery furnace. And then Nebuchadnezzar sees something that makes him leap to his feet in alarm. He says to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They answer, "True, O king." He says, But I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. 4 men, not 3. And they are not burning. They are walking around unbound, unhurt. And there is a 4th figure with them. Like a son of the gods, Nebuchadnezzar says. Who is the 4th figure? The text does not explicitly say, but the implication is clear. God himself has entered the furnace with them. Nebuchadnezzar approaches the door of the furnace and calls out, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. And they come out. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gather around them. They see that the fire has not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads is not singed. Their cloaks are not harmed. No smell of fire has come upon them. They walked into a furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. And they come out without even the smell of smoke on them. Nebuchadnezzar declares, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. And he makes a decree that anyone who speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, because no other God is able to rescue like this. And he promotes Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Why is this story here? Why does the book of Daniel include this account of the 3 friends when Daniel himself is not even present? Because it establishes a pattern. When you refuse to compromise, when you remain faithful even when it costs you everything, God shows up. Not always in the way you expect. Not always preventing the trial. But in the midst of it, God enters the furnace with you. And this pattern, established here with the 3 friends, will be critical when Daniel himself faces his ultimate test. More time passes. Nebuchadnezzar has another dream. This one terrifies him even more than the first. He calls in all the wise men of Babylon, but none of them can interpret it. Finally Daniel comes in. And Nebuchadnezzar tells him the dream. He saw a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. But then a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven and proclaimed, Chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him, and let 7 periods of time pass over him. Nebuchadnezzar asks Daniel what it means. And Daniel is distressed. He stands there for a moment, alarmed, his thoughts troubling him. The king says, Let not the dream or the interpretation alarm you. And Daniel answers, My lord, may the dream be for those who hate you and its interpretation for your enemies. He does not want to tell the king what the dream means, because the dream is about Nebuchadnezzar himself. He is the tree, great and strong, reaching to heaven, visible to the ends of the earth. But he is going to be cut down. He is going to lose his mind and live like an animal for 7 periods of time, until he acknowledges that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Daniel tells him all this. And then he begs the king, Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by practicing righteousness, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed, that there may perhaps be a lengthening of your prosperity. Change your ways. Perhaps this can be avoided. But Nebuchadnezzar does not listen. 12 months pass. The king is walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. And he says, Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? While the words are still in his mouth, a voice comes from heaven. O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. And you shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Immediately the word is fulfilled. Nebuchadnezzar is driven from among men and eats grass like an ox. His body is wet with the dew of heaven until his hair grows as long as eagle's feathers and his nails are like bird's claws. The most powerful man in the world is reduced to an animal. Because of pride. Because he claimed credit for what God had given him. 7 periods of time pass. 7 years most likely. And then, at the end of that time, Nebuchadnezzar lifts his eyes to heaven. His reason returns to him. And he blesses the Most High and praises and honors him who lives forever. He says, "His dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, 'What have you done?' His reason returns. His majesty and splendor return. His counselors and lords seek him out. He is restored to his kingdom, and still more greatness is added to him. And he declares, 'Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right and his ways are just. And those who walk in pride he is able to humble.'" This is the last we hear of Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel. He ends his story acknowledging the Most High, praising the God of heaven. The pagan king who destroyed Jerusalem and took Daniel captive ends his reign worshiping Daniel's God. And through all of this Daniel has been there. Serving faithfully. Speaking truth. Maintaining integrity. Even when the king went mad, even when the kingdom was in chaos, Daniel remained faithful. But Nebuchadnezzar dies. And a new king takes the throne. And everything changes. The new king is Belshazzar. He is Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, though the text calls him his son because in that culture, grandson and son are used interchangeably. Belshazzar is not the man his grandfather was. He is weak, self-indulgent, foolish. And in the year 539 BC, while the Persian army is literally besieging the city, Belshazzar throws a party. He makes a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drinks wine in front of the 1,000. And then, in a moment of spectacular sacrilege, he commands that the vessels of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem be brought in. These are the sacred vessels, the cups and bowls used in the worship of the God of Israel. And Belshazzar uses them to drink wine. He and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drink from the holy vessels of God's temple. And they praise the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. It is an act of profound disrespect and arrogance. And immediately something happens. The fingers of a human hand appear and begin writing on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, opposite the lampstand. Just a hand. No body. No arm. Just fingers writing. The king sees the hand as it writes. And his face turns pale. His thoughts alarm him. His limbs give way. His knees knock together. He cries out for the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers to be brought in. He says to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Third ruler because Belshazzar himself is only second. His father, Nabonidus, is the actual king but he is away. All the king's wise men come in. But they cannot read the writing or make known to the king the interpretation. And Belshazzar is greatly alarmed, and his color changes and his lords are perplexed. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his lords, comes into the banqueting hall. She says, "O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation." Daniel is brought in before the king. He is old now, probably in his 80s. He has served in this kingdom for nearly 70 years. And Belshazzar says to him, "You are that Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought from Judah. I have heard of you that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, You shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Daniel's response is telling. He says, "Let your gifts be for yourself and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. Let your gifts be for yourself." Daniel does not want the king's rewards. He is not doing this for position or wealth. He is doing it because it is his calling. Because God has given him the ability to interpret. And then Daniel does something unexpected. Before he interprets the writing, he preaches a sermon. He reminds Belshazzar of what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He says, "O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he killed, and whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he raised up, and whom he would, he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom he will." And then Daniel looks Belshazzar in the eye and says, "And you his son Belshazzar have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this, but you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven. And the vessels of his house have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but the God in whose hand is your breath, and whose are all your ways you have not honored. You knew better. You saw what happened to your grandfather. And you did the same thing anyway. This is not ignorance. This is willful rebellion." And then Daniel reads the writing. Mini tekel parson. And he interprets it. Mean, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Paris, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. This is a death sentence. Not just for Belshazzar but for the entire Babylonian empire. Tonight you will fall. And Belshazzar, because he is a foolish man who does not understand what he has just been told, commands that Daniel be clothed with purple and a chain of gold put around his neck, and a proclamation is made about him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar the Chaldean king is killed, and Darius the Mede receives the kingdom. Babylon falls. The great empire that destroyed Jerusalem, that took Daniel captive 70 years ago, falls in a single night. And Daniel, the Hebrew exile, survives the transition. He has outlasted Nebuchadnezzar. He has outlasted Belshazzar. He is 82 years old and he is about to serve a third empire. But this new empire will test him in a way he has never been tested before. Because in Babylon, Daniel was valued for his wisdom. In Persia he will be hated for his faithfulness. Darius the Mede takes over the kingdom. He is 62 years old. He reorganizes the empire. He appoints 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom. And over the satraps, he appoints 3 high officials, to whom the satraps give account, so that the king might suffer no loss. One of these 3 high officials is Daniel. An 82-year-old Hebrew exile is made one of the 3 most powerful administrators in the Persian Empire. And not just one of 3. The text says that Daniel distinguished himself above the high officials and the satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. He is so competent, so trustworthy, so exceptional that the king plans to set him over the whole kingdom. This is an astonishing level of success. But it creates a problem. The other high officials and the satraps are jealous. They want to bring Daniel down. So they look for grounds for complaint against Daniel. They search for some way to accuse him, some mistake he has made, some corruption they can expose. And they find nothing. The text says they could find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful and no error or fault was found in him. Read that again. No error or fault was found in him. Daniel is not just competent. He is not just successful. He is beyond reproach. In a system rife with corruption, where officials regularly take bribes and abuse their power, Daniel is clean. After serving in government for 70 years, through multiple regime changes, in positions of enormous power and influence, Daniel has maintained absolute integrity. There is nothing in his professional life that can be used against him. So the officials say to one another, We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. Unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. They know Daniel. They know he prays 3 times a day. They know he is devoted to his God in a way that is inflexible, non-negotiable. And they decide to use that against him. So these high officials and satraps come to the king by agreement. They say to him, "O King Darius, live forever." All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction, that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document, so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. This is brilliant and devious. They are flattering the king's ego. They are framing it as honoring him. For 30 days, everyone in the kingdom should pray only to the king. It is a show of loyalty, they say. A demonstration of unity. And they are lying about the agreement. They say all the high officials are agreed. But Daniel, one of the 3 high officials, has not been consulted. Darius, flattered and perhaps not thinking clearly, signs the document. It becomes law. And according to the law of the Medes and Persians, once the king signs something, it cannot be changed. Even the king himself cannot revoke it. The trap is set. And now all they have to do is wait for Daniel to walk into it. When Daniel knows that the document has been signed, he goes to his house. He has windows in his upper chamber that are open toward Jerusalem. And he gets down on his knees 3 times a day and prays and gives thanks before his God, as he has done previously. Read that carefully. When Daniel knows that the document has been signed, he knows. He knows that praying will get him killed. He knows that his enemies are watching. He knows that he has 2 choices. He can stop praying for 30 days. Just a month. It is not that long. And then he can go back to his normal routine. No one would blame him. It is not a denial of faith. It is just a practical accommodation to an unreasonable law. Or he can keep praying. And die. Daniel chooses to keep praying. Not just keep praying, but keep praying in the exact same way he has always prayed. He goes to his house. To his upper chamber. To the windows that are open toward Jerusalem. He gets down on his knees. He prays 3 times a day. He gives thanks before his God. As he has done previously. He does not hide. He does not pray quietly in a closet where no one can see. He does not change his routine to avoid detection. He prays openly, publicly, exactly as he has always prayed. Why not just compromise for 30 days? Because for Daniel this is not about 30 days. This is about who he is. Daniel has been praying 3 times a day facing Jerusalem for 70 years. When he was a captive boy watching his city burn, he prayed. When he was in the training program learning Babylonian wisdom, he prayed. When he interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he prayed first. When his friends were thrown into the furnace, he prayed for them. When Nebuchadnezzar went mad, he prayed. When Belshazzar defiled the temple vessels, he prayed. Through every empire, every king, every crisis, every success, Daniel has prayed. It is not a habit. It is not a religious obligation. It is who he is. It is his connection to the God who has been faithful to him for 8 decades. And he will not stop. Not for a law. Not for a king. Not to save his life. There are some things more important than survival. There are some things that define you so completely that to give them up would be to lose yourself. For Daniel, prayer is one of those things. So he prays. Openly. Knowing he will be caught. Knowing what it will cost him. And his enemies are watching. They come by agreement and find Daniel making petition and plea before his God. They have what they need. They go to the king. But they are clever about how they present it. They do not start by accusing Daniel. They start by reminding the king of the law. They say, "O king, did you not sign an injunction, that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king answers, "The thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked." And then they spring the trap. They say, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Daniel pays no attention to you." They frame it as disrespect, as rebellion against the king himself. And the king is distressed. The text says he is much distressed. He sets his mind to deliver Daniel. He labors until the sun goes down to rescue him. But the men come back and say to the king, "Know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed." Darius is trapped by his own law. He has been manipulated into signing a decree that will kill the one man in his administration he actually trusts. And there is nothing he can do about it. The irony is bitter. The most powerful man in the empire is powerless to save one old man. Because of a law he himself signed. So the king commands, and Daniel is brought and cast into the den of lions. The den is not a cage. It is a pit, carved into the ground deep enough that a man cannot climb out. The opening is at the top, covered with a stone. The lions live down there in the darkness. And when criminals are condemned, they are thrown down into the pit. The stone is rolled over the opening, and the screaming begins. Usually it does not last long. Daniel is brought to the den. He is an old man, 82 years old. He has lived a long life, a successful life, a faithful life, and it ends here in a pit with lions. But before they throw him in, the king says something to him. He says, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. May your God deliver you." The king does not believe it will happen. How could he? No one survives the den. But it is all he can offer. A hope. A prayer to a God he does not know. Daniel is cast into the den. The stone is brought and laid on the mouth of the den. And the king seals it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, so that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. The king wants to make sure no one can sneak in and rescue Daniel or harm him further. The official seals ensure that the stone cannot be moved without breaking them. And then the king goes to his palace. He spends the night fasting. No diversions are brought to him. He cannot sleep. Can you imagine that night? For the king, it is a night of regret, of guilt, of helplessness. He has been outmaneuvered by scheming officials. He has condemned the one man he trusted. And he can do nothing about it. He lies awake thinking about Daniel in the den, wondering if it is already over, wondering if the lions have already torn him apart. But what about Daniel? The text does not tell us what Daniel experiences in the den. It does not describe his fear or his prayers or his thoughts. It just tells us later what happened. But we can imagine. Daniel is thrown into the pit. He lands hard on the stone floor. The impact knocks the wind out of him. Above, the opening is blocked as the stone is rolled into place. The light disappears. He is in complete darkness. And he is not alone. He can hear them. The lions. Their breathing. Their movement. The click of claws on stone. How many lions are there? The text does not say. But dens typically held multiple lions. Perhaps 6. Perhaps 10. Perhaps more. And they are hungry. They are kept hungry because they are used for execution. A well-fed lion might ignore a person. A hungry lion will not. Daniel's eyes adjust to the darkness. He can see shapes moving. Eyes reflecting what little light seeps through cracks around the stone. The lions circle him. They are curious, cautious, assessing this new thing that has been thrown into their domain. Daniel stands still. What else can he do? He cannot fight them. He is an old man. Unarmed. Outnumbered. He cannot run. There is nowhere to go. He can only stand. And wait. And perhaps pray. Has God brought him this far only to let him die now? Has a lifetime of faithfulness led to this? Torn apart by animals in a pit? Or will God do something? Daniel does not know. He has faith, yes. But faith is not certainty. Faith is trusting God even when you do not know how the story ends. The lions come closer. One of them approaches Daniel directly. It is close enough now that Daniel can feel its breath, can smell the blood and raw meat on its muzzle. The lion opens its mouth. Its teeth are massive, designed to crush bone to tear flesh. And then, nothing. The lion closes its mouth. It sits down. The other lions settle as well. They do not attack. They do not even seem interested in attacking. It is as if something invisible stands between Daniel and the beasts, as if a hand has closed their mouths. Daniel stands in the den all night, surrounded by predators. And he is not touched. The night passes. In the palace the king cannot sleep. In the den, Daniel stands with lions who have become as docile as house cats. And above them both God watches. The God who shut the mouths of lions for Daniel. The God who entered the furnace with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The God who gave a young Hebrew exile the ability to interpret dreams and the integrity to remain faithful for 70 years. That God, still faithful, still powerful, still present, even in the darkest pit. At the break of day, as soon as it is light, the king gets up. He goes in haste to the den of lions. As he comes near to the den where Daniel is, he cries out in a tone of anguish. He says, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Has your God been able to deliver you?" The king does not expect an answer. How could there be an answer? No one survives the night in the den. But then from inside the pit, a voice. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm." Daniel is alive. The king is exceedingly glad. He commands that Daniel be taken up out of the den. They roll away the stone. They break the seals. And Daniel comes up out of the pit. And when they examine him, no kind of harm is found on him. Not a scratch. Not a bite. Not even a bruise from being thrown in. He has spent the night with hungry lions. And he comes out completely unharmed. Because he had trusted in his God. The king is so moved by this that he immediately commands that the men who had maliciously accused Daniel be brought. And they are cast into the den of lions. Them, their children, and their wives. It is a harsh justice by our standards. But it is also a demonstration. Because before they even reach the bottom of the den, before they hit the floor, the lions overpower them and break all their bones in pieces. The same lions that spent all night with Daniel without touching him tear these men apart in seconds. It is proof, undeniable proof, that Daniel's deliverance was not natural. The lions were not sick. They were not old. They were not full. They were held back by the power of God. And when that power was removed, they did what lions do. Darius, convinced now of the power of Daniel's God, makes a decree. He writes to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. He says, "Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree, that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, he who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." For the second time, a pagan emperor issues a decree honoring the God of a Hebrew exile. First Nebuchadnezzar after the furnace. Now Darius after the den. And Daniel prospers. He prospers during the reign of Darius and during the reign of Cyrus the Persian. He lives to see the decree that allows the exiles to return to Jerusalem. He lives to see the promise of restoration beginning to be fulfilled. And he does it all while maintaining absolute faithfulness to his God. From the age of 12, when he was taken captive, to his 80s, when he stood in the den, Daniel never compromised. Not once. Not when it would have been easy. Not when it would have saved his life. Not ever. And God honored that faithfulness. Not by preventing trials. Not by keeping him from the furnace or the den. But by being with him in the midst of them. By shutting the mouths of lions. By bringing him through. So what do we do with this story? What does it mean for us, living in a world very different from ancient Babylon? We are not facing literal dens of lions. Most of us are not being asked to choose between prayer and death. But the principles in this story are as relevant now as they were 2,500 years ago. First, the question of assimilation. Daniel lived in Babylon for 70 years. He learned the language. He learned the literature. He served in the government. He was successful by every measure. But he never became Babylonian. He remained a follower of the God of Israel. He was in the empire but not of the empire. This is the tension every person of faith faces in every culture. How do we engage with the world without being absorbed by it? How do we succeed in systems that do not share our values without compromising those values? How do we maintain our distinctiveness while still being excellent at what we do? Daniel shows us that it is possible. You can be the best in your field and still be faithful to God. You can rise to the top of your profession and still maintain integrity. You can engage fully with culture without being defined by it. But it requires intentionality. Daniel resolved in his heart not to defile himself. He made a decision early on about what he would and would not compromise. And then he held to that decision consistently for 70 years. That is the key. It is not about one dramatic moment of faithfulness. It is about daily decisions, made over and over again to hold the line. Second, the question of integrity. When Daniel's enemies searched for grounds to accuse him, they found nothing. No error or fault was found in him. Think about what that means. 70 years in government. 70 years of opportunities to cut corners, take bribes, abuse power. And Daniel never did. He was beyond reproach. This is rare. This is remarkable. And it is what gave him credibility when it mattered most. When he stood before kings, when he interpreted dreams, when he spoke truth to power, people listened because they knew he was not corrupt. His integrity gave weight to his words. How many of us can say the same? If people searched our professional lives, our financial dealings, our private conversations, what would they find? Would they find integrity? Or would they find the small compromises we have made, the corners we have cut, the ways we have justified doing what is convenient instead of what is right? Daniel challenges us to live above reproach. Not perfectly. No one is perfect. But with a consistent pattern of honesty, fairness, and faithfulness that people can see and cannot deny. Third, the question of non-negotiables. For Daniel, prayer was non-negotiable. It did not matter that the law said otherwise. It did not matter that it would cost him his life. He prayed. Because some things are more important than survival. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things you would not give up even if it cost you everything? Most of us have never had to answer that question for real. We say we believe certain things, we value certain things, but we have never been tested. We have never had to choose between our faith and our comfort, between our convictions and our career, between what we believe and what would make our life easier. Daniel had to make that choice. And he chose faithfulness. Not because he was sure God would rescue him. He did not know that. He chose faithfulness because faithfulness is what matters, regardless of the outcome. Remember what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said. Our God is able to deliver us. He will deliver us. But if not, we still will not bow. That is faith without guarantees. That is commitment to what is right, not to what is safe. And that is what God honors. Fourth, the question of God's presence. God did not keep Daniel out of the den. God let him be thrown in. But God went with him. God shut the mouths of the lions. God brought him through. This is a critical distinction. God does not always prevent suffering. But God is always present in it. The promise is not that you will never face trials. The promise is that you will never face them alone. God enters the furnace with you. God stands in the den with you. God is there in the darkest places. And that makes all the difference. Not because it removes the pain, but because it gives the pain meaning. Because it assures you that you are not abandoned. Because it reminds you that the story does not end in the pit. Fifth, the question of influence. Daniel's faithfulness did not just save him. It changed empires. Nebuchadnezzar came to worship the Most High because of Daniel. Darius issued a decree honoring the God of Daniel because of what he witnessed. When you live with integrity, when you remain faithful, when you trust God even in the den, people notice. And sometimes, your faithfulness becomes the means by which God reaches people who would never otherwise encounter him. Your life becomes a testimony. Your choices become a witness. And God uses it. Not because you are trying to make a point, but because you are simply being who you are supposed to be. And that, it turns out, is the most powerful apologetic there is. But we need to be honest about something. Faithfulness costs. It cost Daniel everything again and again. When he was 12, it cost him his home, his family, his culture, everything he knew. When he refused the king's food, it could have cost him his position, his future, his life. When he interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dreams, he risked the king's wrath. When he told Belshazzar the truth, he put himself in danger. When he prayed with his windows open, knowing it was illegal, it cost him the den. Faithfulness is not free. It is not easy. It does not always result in immediate vindication or visible success. Sometimes faithfulness means you lose the promotion because you would not compromise your ethics. Sometimes faithfulness means you lose relationships because you cannot go along with what everyone else is doing. Sometimes faithfulness means you are misunderstood, mistrusted, marginalized. Sometimes faithfulness means you stand alone. And that is hard. We want to believe that if we are faithful, God will make everything work out smoothly. That we will be blessed and successful and vindicated. And sometimes that happens. Daniel was blessed. He was successful. He was vindicated. But not always immediately. Not always in ways that were comfortable. He spent a night in a den with lions before he was vindicated. His friends spent time in a furnace before they were vindicated. The vindication came. But it came on the other side of the trial. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to count the cost. Jesus said to count the cost before following him. Because following him is not about prosperity and ease. It is about taking up a cross. It is about losing your life to find it. It is about faithfulness that persists even when it hurts. Daniel understood that. He had counted the cost. And he had decided that knowing God, serving God, honoring God, was worth more than anything else. Worth more than comfort. Worth more than success. Worth more than life itself. And so when the moment came, when the choice was presented, when the den was opened before him, he was ready. Because he had been preparing for that moment for 70 years. Every day that he prayed, he was preparing. Every decision to maintain integrity, he was preparing. Every choice to remain faithful when it would have been easier to compromise, he was preparing. And when the ultimate test came, he was ready. Are we? There is a shadow that falls across this story. Just as there was with Abraham. Just as there is with all the great stories of the Old Testament. They point forward. To something greater. Someone greater. Daniel in the den is a shadow of another man in another tomb. Thrown in because of faithfulness. Sealed with a stone. Left for dead. But on the third day, or in this case the next morning, the stone is rolled away. And he comes out alive. Jesus spoke of the sign of Jonah, 3 days in the belly of the great fish. But he could have spoken of the sign of Daniel, 1 night in the den with lions. Because both are pictures of death and resurrection. Both are images of God's power to bring life out of death. But here is the difference. Daniel was rescued from the lions. Jesus was not rescued from the cross. Daniel came out of the den alive because God shut the mouths of the beasts. Jesus came out of the tomb alive because death itself could not hold him. Daniel's deliverance was a miracle that saved 1 man. Jesus' resurrection is a miracle that saves the world. And here is what connects them. Both required faithfulness unto death. Daniel was willing to die rather than stop praying. Jesus was willing to die rather than abandon his mission. Both trusted the Father, even when trusting the Father led them into the darkest places. Both emerged victorious not because they avoided suffering but because they went through it trusting God. And both became testimonies to the power and faithfulness of God. Kings bowed before the God of Daniel. Nations will bow before the name of Jesus. The story of Daniel is not just history. It is prophecy. It is a preview of how God works. How God is faithful to those who are faithful to him. How God brings deliverance not always by preventing the trial, but by being present in it and bringing you through it. How God uses faithful people to change the world. And it is an invitation. An invitation to live the kind of life Daniel lived. A life of uncompromising faithfulness. A life of integrity that cannot be challenged. A life of prayer that sustains you through every crisis. A life that trusts God more than it fears death. So here is what this story asks of you. Not what it asked of Daniel. What it asks of you. Right now. Today. In the world you live in. First, resolve in your heart. Like Daniel did when he was young. Decide now what you will not compromise. Do not wait until you are in the crisis to make that decision. Make it now. In the quiet. In the safety. When you can think clearly. Decide what matters most. Decide what you believe is true and worth holding to no matter what. And then hold to it. Every day. In every decision. In every small choice. Because the small choices prepare you for the big ones. Second, pursue integrity. In everything. In your work, in your relationships, in your finances, in your private life. Live in such a way that if people search for grounds to accuse you, they find nothing. Not because you are perfect, but because you are honest, because you are fair, because you keep your word, because you can be trusted. This is not about being self-righteous. This is about being reliable. And reliability over time becomes reputation. And reputation gives you influence. And influence gives you the opportunity to make a difference. Third, pray. Consistently. Daily. Regularly. Not as a religious obligation, but as a relationship. Prayer is how you stay connected to God. It is how you remember who you are and whose you are. It is how you maintain perspective when the world around you is trying to reshape you. Daniel prayed 3 times a day every day for 70 years. That is 10,000 days of prayer. And every one of those prayers was preparing him for the night in the den. What are you doing every day that is preparing you for the test you will face? Fourth, be willing to stand alone. There will be moments when everyone else is bowing, and you are the only one standing. When everyone else is compromising, and you are the only one holding the line. When everyone else thinks you are foolish, stubborn, unreasonable. And in those moments you have to decide. Are you going to go along to get along? Or are you going to stand? Daniel stood. And yes, it got him thrown into a den. But it also got him delivered. And it changed an empire. Fifth, trust God in the den. Because sooner or later, if you live faithfully, you will end up in a den. Maybe not a literal pit with literal lions. But a dark place. A hard place. A place where you cannot see the way out. And in that place you have to trust. Trust that God is with you. Trust that God sees you. Trust that God has not abandoned you. Trust that the story does not end in the pit. Because it does not. God shut the mouths of the lions for Daniel. And God will be faithful to you. Maybe not in the way you expect. Maybe not in the timing you prefer. But God will be faithful. Because that is who God is. So we return to the den beneath the city of Babylon. To the stone chamber carved from rock. To the darkness and the predators and the old man standing calmly in their midst. We return to Daniel. 82 years old. A lifetime of faithfulness behind him. A night with lions before him. And a God who has never failed him. This is the story of a man who decided, when he was just a boy, that some things matter more than survival. That God matters more than empires. That integrity matters more than success. That prayer matters more than safety. And he lived that decision every day for 70 years. He was not perfect. He was not superhuman. He was just faithful. Consistently. Daily. Uncompromisingly. And God honored that faithfulness. Not by making his life easy. But by being present in his life. In the training program and the king's court. In the interpretation of dreams and the writing on the wall. In the furnace with his friends and the den with the lions. God was there. And that made all the difference. Daniel walked out of the den. He lived to see the restoration of his people. He lived to see the promises beginning to be fulfilled. And he left us a legacy. A legacy of what it means to live faithfully in a faithless world. A legacy of integrity in a corrupt system. A legacy of courage in the face of death. A legacy that says, it is possible. It is possible to be faithful. It is possible to stand. It is possible to trust God even in the darkest places. It is possible to emerge from the den. And that legacy calls to us. It asks us to examine our own lives. Our own compromises. Our own fears. Our own faith. It asks us, what would you die for? And then it asks us something even more challenging. What will you live for? Because dying for your faith in one dramatic moment is hard. But living for your faith, day after day, year after year, through all the small decisions and quiet compromises and subtle pressures, is even harder. Daniel did both. He was willing to die. And he lived faithfully. For 70 years. In exile. In power. In crisis. In success. Always faithful. Always praying. Always trusting. Always believing that God is who he says he is and does what he says he will do. That is the example. That is the challenge. That is the invitation. To live a Daniel life. Not a perfect life. But a faithful one. Not a safe life. But a trusting one. Not a life that avoids the den. But a life that walks through the den with God. And emerges on the other side to tell the story. To bear witness. To declare like Darius did, he is the living God enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He saved Daniel from the power of the lions. And he will save you. Not always from the trial. But always through it. The stone can be rolled away. The mouths can be shut. The morning can come. And you can walk out alive. Because the God of Daniel is still God. Still faithful. Still powerful. Still present. Even in the den. Especially in the den. Always. In the den God shut the mouths of lions. In your den whatever it is, God is there too.